Pozdravljeni. Danes se bomo podrobneje posvetili Tarnu Willersu, mešalcu in snemalcu zvoka, ki smo ga lahko v Sloveniji prvič videli že lani, ko se je kot gost oglasil na prvem audioforumu na AGRFT, Akademiji za gledališče, radio, film in televizijo v Ljubljani. No, tokrat pa se je vrnil, da bi študentom pomagal pri delavnici snemanja filma, v sklopu katerega je priredil še eno predavanje bolj odprtega tipa, ki sem se ga udeležila tudi sama. In naj mogoče najprej povem par besed o njem. Tarn Anthony Willers se je rodil septembra 1972 v Veliki Britaniji. Zaslovel je prav s filmom Interesno območje, za katerega je skupaj z Johnnyjem Byrnom prejel ne le Oskarja za zvok, ampak tudi britansko nagrado BAFTA za najboljši zvok. Šolal se je na koledžu v Rotherham, nato pa je leta 2004 diplomiral na Nacionalni šoli za film in televizijo v Beaconsfieldu v Buckinghamshireu. Gre za isto šolo, ki je ustanovila Beaconsfield studije. Danes živi na Poljskem, blizu Varšave. Začetek letošnjega leta pa smo si lahko v kinematografih že ogledali njegov najnovejši film Resnična bolečina, ki je bil sneman prav na Poljskem in o katerem je prav tako povedal nekaj besed. Ampak predavanje je bilo v prvi vrsti namenjeno filmu Interesno območje, ki je lani prejel Oskarja za najboljši tujejezični film. Za začetek si osvežimo spomin, za kateri film sploh gre. Na prvi pogled ne gre za film o družini nacistov, ki živi onstran ograje koncentracijskega taborišča Auschwitz, ki ga nikoli ne vidimo, ampak samo slišimo.
Das ist ja wunderschön. Ja, die Azaleen da. Hier gibt es auch Gemüse. Ein bisschen Kräuter, auch Rosmarin. Hier ist rote Beete. Das ist Fenchel. Die Sonnenblumen, ja. Und hier ist der Kohlrabi. Die Kinder essen wahnsinnig viel Kohlrabi.
Die herrliche Zeit, die wir im gemütlichen, gastlichen Hause verlebten, wird immer mit zu unseren schönsten Urlaubserinnerungen gehören. Im Osten steht unser Morgen. Herzlichen Dank für eure nationalsozialistische Gastfreundschaft.
Hi, Lisa.
Za začetek nam je pokazal, kako so na snemalni lokaciji nastavili mikrofone, ki so jih potem do neke mere zakrili že na licu mesta, nekaj pa v postprodukciji. Film so namreč posneli tako, da so igralci vedeli približno, kaj morajo odigrati, nato pa so po 1 uro igrali to sceno neprekinjeno. Kamere in mikrofone so zato skrili v sceno, da bi se lahko igralci čim bolj uživeli in bi jih okolica čim manj motila pri njihovih vlogah. Uporabili so torej podoben princip, kot ga uporabljajo pri snemanju oddaj Velikega brata.
Eventually, here's an example, look how we split a room into 4 quarters. And we had the mics like this. It's the position that would most replicate a boom operator, where they would have a mic above the actors in a house. And then, of course, any cables that were visible in shots on the ceilings, there's a budget for VFX to paint them out. But we had to speak to the VFX supervisor, find out the best routes around, the angles of shooting. We had a shot list, which Glazer then disregarded, in order for us to find the best routes for the cables to cost them the least money to paint all this stuff out. What's next? Here's another example. And then there were certain scenes where we knew that the mics we used for other scenes that we just wanted to capture general movement through the house. We knew there were going to be 3 guys sitting at a table, for example. So my boom operator came up. I'll give him the credit he deserves. He came up with this idea. He went out and he got us a dream catcher. Do you know what a dream catcher is? Yeah. Took it to pieces and we stuck the metal loop from the dream catcher to the ceiling, and then with fishing wire we could angle the mic into a set position, which would give us a bit more of what we needed in a particular position. In fact, that one you can see on the left of the picture, you can see some stairs. That was for a shot where 2 people were walking down the stairs having a conversation, and we thought we might get a bit more of it on that mic there. That's the end of those. So basically, we spent 3 weeks putting all these mics in and around the house to capture as much activity as we could in the house. And then there were also the same thing in the garden. These are my favourite ones. Micha likes these. Oh God. So what we were doing, as you can see there's a camera and a mic. Everywhere where there was a camera, of his 10 cameras, because we were making an observational movie, all the lenses were wide lenses. We're never going in for the dialogue, we're never doing conventional drama. So every time we see a camera, we need to give him perspective sound. As I've told you guys this week, most of you guys, you know, we're matching sound for picture. And we don't know, until he goes into an edit room, we don't know how he's going to cut his movie, because we're shooting all the cameras at the same time. So I've got to put sound for each camera, so that when he's in an edit suite, months down the line, he's got matching sound to what he decides to look at. So here's an example. There's a hidden, when we say hidden cameras, it wasn't like spy cameras. They were all Sony Venice. If you know Sony Venice, they were Sony Venice. And so they'd be hidden like that, and obviously you see the lens sticking out because, you know. And everywhere they put a camera, we put a mic with it. There's another one of those, right. This is a guard hut that they built. It was a container. Production designers turned it into a guard hut, and inside there is where Glazer was with all his monitors, the producers, me with my equipment, the DITs. So we were all hiding in plain sight. We were all in the movie. Yeah. And we had to run our cables from in there. This is why we had to buy so much cable. Run the cables from in that hut up to the attic of the house and then down through the house. And the camera department had to run their cables from there out to the basement. So we were digging trenches in the ground, burying cable runs in the ground. We had a telegraph pole that my cables went up and over a telegraph pole. And then we came up with this idea. We thought maybe we'd just stick this in the garden, call it the mic tree. I shan't say anything.
Kako pa so mikrofone usmerili? Kaj je hotel režiser sploh ujeti?
But also we were never trying to capture dialogue on the move with it. He wasn't interested in the dialogue. He told me that the dialogue's almost incidental in this movie. It's literally observing life of a family, middle-class aspirational family living a nice life. The dad's trying to, you know, do the best he can at work. And, you know, they're trying to bring their family up in a nice way. And so he wasn't interested in drama at all. It was an observational piece about them. And then, of course, everything else that happens over the wall.
As you mentioned, it's like a nice family film.
Yeah.
I remember our first conversation that we had about you coming to Slovenia was with Johnny and you, and I remember the sentence from Johnny said, "Oh no, we did 2 separate films." Can you maybe speak something about that?
Yeah. So eventually it turned out we made 2 films. And we refer to them as the film that you see and the film that you hear. And I worked on the film that we see. So we, you know, everything you see in the movie, all the sound of all the action and any of the dialogue, I recorded. And everything that happens outside the garden, over the wall, everything out there, all the horror, was Johnny's work. And that's the film that you hear. So first and foremost, we made our film and there was none of that sound. We made, you know, we made our film about the family, about the kids, captured the dialogue, all the things that we do. And there were no gunshots and no screams, there were no references for us. And so eventually they had a film of just our sound. And once they'd edited the film to full picture lock, they edited the film using our sound. They had a full movie. They'd made all their visual decisions, finished, locked it. And then they started work with Johnny and his sound design team. And they started adding in everything that you hear in the movie.
Na začetku filma nas je režiser Jonathan Glazer, ki je glavni idejni vodja tudi zvočne podobe filma, prepustil črnemu zaslonu z glasnim zvokom. Enako se zgodi še na 2 mestih v filmu, ko video prekrije rdeč zaslon, glasnost zvoka pa se nenehno zvišuje. Johnny Byrne in Glazer, ki sta zvok montirala, sta vsakič znova začela film gledati od začetka, da bi dobila pravi občutek, kdaj je kaj preglasno ali pretiho za gledalca.
Not enough sound wouldn't be true to the atrocities, the awfulness of everything that happened. Too much sound would be spoon-feeding the audience, or maybe over-dramatising it. So we had to just find the right balance between the film you see and the film you hear. And it took them a long time.
Because of the non-conventional approach of the whole process, it's like in the way the house was set up and mic'd and put a camera, you could easily say that they were treating the house as a character in the film.
Yeah, it was suggested to us, that the house becomes a character in the film. The way, the way we conventionally make a movie, we shoot the dialogue, as I've been telling you guys this week, we try and eradicate as much sound as possible, get the dialogue, and post-production can use Foley and effects, put score and things like that. In this movie it was different. Jonathan Glazer wasn't that interested in the dialogue as such, but he was interested in hearing every detail, every nuance, every action, every movement. Every door handle became a feature, every footstep. There were no carpets going down on the floor like I've been telling you this week. And so the reason we put so many mics in the house, which gave him so many recorded tracks of audio, was so that they could layer in and layer in and layer in these sounds and create this atmosphere that we're with them in the garden or in the house. And so it felt to us like the house had got its own character. We kind of created a character for the house.
Nekaj povsem drugega pa so nočni posnetki, kjer vidimo sliko, kot bi gledali z vojaškim daljnogledom za gledanje po noči, spremljamo pa stransko zgodbo dekleta, ki je na območje delovišča ljudem iz koncentracijskega taborišča, ki so tja hodili delat, resnično skrivalo hrano v zemljo sredi noči.
We used a thermal imaging camera. It's a military camera called FLIR. Jonathan had been told about this lady that lived in the town of Oskarjevec. It wasn't in the script, it wasn't in the story, and he was so blown away by her story when he met her that he wrote a piece about her and put it in the film. And when she was a girl in Oskarjevec, she would go out at night and she would bury the fruit like the character in the movie. And he was so overwhelmed by this that he put her in. He called her the Angel of Auschwitz, and so he shot her differently to everybody else. He made her stand out. He shot her with a thermal imaging camera, which looks like a negative image. So what he's made positive, negative. He's just kind of turned everything on its head. And we had a few issues with this. If you're not familiar with German, he's reading the kids the story of Hansel and Gretel. And if you're familiar with the story of Hansel and Gretel, as we discussed earlier, you'll know that it doesn't end very well for the witch, who gets burned, doesn't she? So, in keeping with the themes of the movie. So, we shot all of those scenes with this girl at night. Sound recorded. And this FLIR camera is so noisy that we couldn't record any audio when they shot with the camera. We had to just wait. It comes with this huge fan to cool it. And the only way we could get anything for that was basically doing live Foley. So we would film the action with the FLIR camera. And when Jonathan was happy that he'd got what he wanted from her, we would then get her to replicate it exactly the same. Everybody would stand around and wait. It would be 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever. And it was the only time in the movie I had a boom operating, and he would put the full-length pole out, keep himself as far away from her as possible for his footsteps, and then he would just track her with the mic, and she would replicate all the action, burying the apples, walking down the hill, whatever it was, so that they'd got an exact replica of her action, and they used that in those scenes. The bike she rides down the hill, there's a scene where she rides down the hill on the bike. I sat on that bike for a morning, put radio mics all over it, and rode it up and down the same hill. It had to be the same hill, not just any old hill, not any old bike. And the woman in question, the woman who he based this character on, it was her bike. It was her actual bike. And the dress that the girl wears in the film was her actual dress from this woman. And in fact, it went beyond that. His attention to detail went beyond that, to the point, you might remember the scene where she sits and plays at the piano. Another little detail, apart from all these amazing details, was in this movie there's no cinematic lighting. None at all. The only lighting that was used inside the interior location in the house was practical lighting. There's no lighting through windows. Everything was shot at the time of day that it was set. So, you know, if his alarm clock goes off at 5:30 in the morning, that's the time we hit the record button for the first take. And we would prep for that scene up until then. And the light was the light. And Glazer said, you know, that's the light at 5:30 in the morning. That's how it would be at Auschwitz. That's what it is. And on this day, she sat and played this piano. The clouds parted a little. And it's not a 10K HMI light outside with, you know, and a deliberate camera flare. The sun came out as she was playing this music. It was almost like it came out for us. I don't know.
O začetku filma sem nekaj že govorila. Črn zaslon, ki ga opazujemo dolgo časa, začenja postopoma dobivati zvoke in zdi se, kot da ga gledamo skoraj predolgo. Kot bi nas želel režiser res soočiti s tem, da moramo zdaj sedeti na mestu, da bomo nekje, odkoder ne moremo uiti. Nato pa pred nas postavi idiličen poletni dan z družino oblečeno v belo, ki sedi na obrežju reke in se kopa.
So it's an unusual opening to a movie, isn't it? A black screen for 2.5 minutes and some unusual score. It's Jonathan Glazer's way of saying that you're coming into this, I guess, a cinema. You're coming into the cinema. I want you to leave everything outside. I want you to leave your day outside, leave your world outside. Come in, take a moment. Focus on being here and what you're about to experience. And by having no visual, I think he's saying that sound is the truth of what you're about to watch. I think that's his statement there. The sound you heard, the truth of the sound you heard, was one of my nicest work days of my entire life. I can show you. Where is it? I got a phone call a year after they'd finished, and they said, do you remember the location we went to? And we heard all that nature and all those insects and all those things. Yeah. Can you go there and record us the sound of that again? Because it's the spring again. And we were there where we were doing location scouting and recce's. We weren't filming, but we remember it from the location recce's. It's the same time of year. Can you go there again? You live in Poland. Can you go there? I was like, yeah, it's 450 kilometers away from where I live. But please, we really want it. So I was like, yeah, sure. And I told a few friends, and they said, well, just got the forest here. There's a forest 20 kilometers away. No, it can't be. You know, the guy that's got the bike from the woman and the dress and the bit of paper and plays the music. It can't be that. He'll know. He's going to know. He's going to kill me. He knows what the frogs of southern Poland sound like. I don't know. So I drove 450 kilometers to the south of Poland. The sun came out again. And I stood there for 2 hours because it sounded so amazing with my headphones on that I felt like I was in a David Attenborough documentary or something. It was extraordinary. And so I recorded for 2 hours for him, standing there on my own, no one around, not a soul in sight. It was perfect. It was perfect. And I got paid for that. It was great. But it was another authentic element of the film. It was back to where we were. It was the sound from there, not just library sound. There's no library sound in the film. There's no archive and no library sound. Every sound you hear in the film is curated, chosen, and recorded either by me and my team or by Johnny and his team, which we'll touch on in a minute. I think there's a question about that. But there's no archive material at all, and no digging into some sound library. Let's get some birds and insects.
Kljub temu, da je Tarn Willers veliko govoril o zvoku in je film prav z tega stališča zelo poseben, je glasbe v njem izjemno malo.
So the composer is Mika Levy, who also composed for Jonathan's previous film, Under the Skin, and won awards for. And when he finds people he likes to work with, he keeps them. So he went straight back to Mika, who started working immediately on this score and created a full score. The full movie was scored by Mika. And in the end, there's, I think, just over 11 minutes, which meant it wasn't eligible for competition at like the Oscars or BAFTAs or whatever. I think you've got to have a minimum of 14 or 17 minutes. It doesn't even make it. So all you get is bookended. The closing titles, this opening sequence with the black screen, and the FLIR, the thermal imaging things. The Angel of Auschwitz, she gets a bit of score as well. It's the only time it's in the film. And what they did, they found that they took our sound and they took this full score and their edited film, and then they started working with Johnny. And the more of Johnny's sounds from over the wall in the camp they included in the film, the more of the score got removed bit by bit, because they just said it didn't feel appropriate, and it actually kind of dramatized it more. And he wanted authenticity. He wanted sound to tell us what really happened there. So they removed it and removed it and removed it until there was none left. Almost none left, yeah. But Mika's worked with Jonathan many times and understands that it's about the movie. It's about the thing. It's not about Mika and it's not about Jonathan. It's about the movie. So whatever's best for the film, they're happy with.
Poleg skladatelja in predavatelja je bil zelo pomemben še Johnny Byrne, ki je snemal film, ki ga ne vidimo, onkraj ograje.
In order to create this film that we hear, Johnny Byrne had to become an expert on the sound of Auschwitz in 1944. And so he did extensive research. He got access to the archives there. They very kindly opened up all the archives for him. And he read endless witness testimony. He saw photography, he read books. But particularly interesting for him were the witness testimony, either from people from the town that lived near the camp, or actual survivors, or testimony that they found for people who didn't survive but had somehow written this. And he found out things like people's reactions and what they heard when somebody committed suicide by running to an electric fence. And they described the sounds that they'd experienced. And so things like that, he would then take on board and have to create those sounds. Any gunshots you hear, he researched what the SS officers, what guns, what weapons they would have, And then he contacted military collectors and found people across Europe that had got the actual type of handguns, type of rifles, and then went there, and if he found that they were still working, he would go there, take a recorder, take mics, and he would get them to fire off these weapons, and he actually recorded the authentic weapons. The same with the motorbikes. It was a common thing that the SS guards would sit on a motorbike and rev the engine to drown out the noise of the executions and the torture, partly so that the people outside the camp in the town weren't aware of what was going on, and partly for their own mental health, so that they didn't hear it all. Johnny found out from collectors what kind of motorbikes, what kind of vehicles were in the camp at the time. He found working examples of them and went and recorded them, and so the sounds are all in the movie. He went across Europe and found places where he would find predominantly male and shouting, predominantly angry male shouting. He went to a German second division football match. He covered himself in mics and went into a football match that he knew was a kind of big local derby, big local rivalry game. And he took recordings of people screaming at the referee or whatever. He went to the Paris riots, if you remember the Paris riots. Him and a couple of his team went to the Paris riots, did the same thing, mic'd themselves up. They weren't running around with booms, they mic'd themselves up. And they got involved. And they captured loads of audio recordings like this. And they went to different countries because they knew that in the camp were many nationalities. And to truly authenticate what we experienced, they needed recordings of different nationalities, different voices and different languages.
Ker so zvok, ki ga je snemal Willers, snemali v hiši zraven Auschwitza, ki je eno od večjih turističnih središč, me je zanimalo še, če so jim pustili del taborišča zapreti, da so sploh lahko snemali v tišini.
You can't shut down Auschwitz, no. That doesn't happen. We were just far enough away. We were like 200 meters away. The bigger issue was the noisy main road that ran past right by the house. And we could stop the traffic. We could have 5-minute traffic stops, but we were shooting, takes that would run between half an hour and an hour. So we could have 5-minute traffic stop, and then we had to let the traffic go for 5 minutes, and then we could have a 5-minute traffic stop. We could do that. But the sound of the camp, there was nothing bleeding in from there. No.
So did you delete the sound of traffic? I mean, there was not so many cars back then.
Yeah, exactly. It was, that would have been a little bit of work for Johnny in post, yes. There would have been a little bit of clearing that up, EQing that, but I think these days that's not too difficult. It wasn't overwhelming, it wasn't like right in our face, but there was a kind of hum. But then the industrial hum he made of the machinery of the factory, if you like, the killing factory over the wall would easily drown out anything that we'd experienced on the road that he couldn't get rid of. There's never been a film crew allowed in Auschwitz. You can't make a movie in Auschwitz. And if you remember the scene right when we cut to today, right at the end, just before the credits roll, we go into the camp and there's the cleaners cleaning the exhibitions with the shoes and all of that stuff. So we went in, we were allowed in as a documentary crew. There were 6 of us went in at 4 o'clock in the morning to shoot them cleaning. And we could be there for 2 hours, and we had to go in on foot. We couldn't take the vans or anything like that. Nobody could see that there was a film crew coming in and out. And we captured those officially we were a documentary team. And still only like the 3rd or 4th they've ever had in there. And they'll never let a film shoot in Auschwitz. Quite rightly, I think.
Toliko za danes, hvala za pozornost in se vidimo spet prihodnji teden. Čau.